Good morning, Crossroads Nation. My name's Skip Nelson. I'm a financial advisor with Thrivent Financial and here as one of the many volunteers that bring you Minnesota Crossroads. We are so excited. Have we got a jam-packed day for you? It's worth it getting up early, grab a cup of coffee because you are in for a treat. I've got one of our amazing volunteers to give a little bit of a face story, and a legend in the recruiting, job transition world, Marsha Ballinger, to speak to us. So you have picked a great day to roll out of bed and join us. So grab a cup of coffee, and we are excited to bring you a wonderful day. And after Marsha gives her message, I'll come back and I'll go through a lot of resources that Minnesota Crossroads has for you in job transition. And there's a lot of them. And so you are not in your journey in job transition alone. So make sure you stick around for that. And I'll also tell you about how you can get a copy of this book called How Long, O Lord, How Long? Dale Kreinkamp wrote this book. It's a devotional kind of for people in job transition and how you can actually get a copy of it. So stick around for that. And before we get going, I just wanted to offer a quick word from what I call the owner's manual, the Bible, right? One thing that I found in my job transition is your strengths are kind of your weaknesses. And what I mean by that is there are things, well, just in life, right, that might be our strengths. Like say at work, we're really goal-oriented and we get our stuff done right on time, promptly. You think that'd be a great thing. But does that always make us most popular with other people at the company that maybe aren't achievers or don't work as hard as we do? And maybe because we do work hard, they look not as good. Maybe we're not very popular with them. They might not like us at all. So our strengths can be our weaknesses. Well, I certainly found that in job transition because I found that a lot of things that were strengths and that I felt really good about when I was working, when I wasn't working, the devil came in and really tried to make me think a lot of my strengths were weaknesses. I built multi-million-dollar companies as an entrepreneur, starting from nothing, and had all these skills I thought that were valuable, but the devil was creeping in telling me, oh, you're too old, or those skills aren't valued anymore. Nobody wants you, whatever. And I started to believe it. And that can make job transition really tough. And so I saw Peter 5:8-11, and I thought it was very important in this regard. And it said, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Stand firm in faith because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of suffering. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen. So I would tell you in job transition, sometimes your strengths are your weaknesses, but resist because the devil's going to be trying to point those things out to you, and just tell the devil to hit the bricks. Go away. You don't need that. You don't want that. Turn to the Bible and his word, and you will be protected. Join me in prayer. Kind Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for this day and the people that are part of it. And I just ask that you will bless our speakers, Rich and Marsha, and help them to bring us a wonderful message, and be with every person on this call and answer their prayers and their heartaches and challenges in job transition, and help them utilize the resources here to get through and find a job better than they can possibly imagine. In your kind and heavenly name, amen. So the first person to introduce is kind of a legend in Crossroads, a gentleman by the name of Rich Braden.
Legend.
And
Oh my
Mr.
gosh.
Braden has been a volunteer for years and years and years. and is just a wonderful resource. And we'll be talking about this, but we've got this 8-step process. It's a fantastic class, and it starts periodically. And Rich has one starting on Monday. And so you can get in with the man himself. So if you have not been through the 8-step class, make sure you get in. We are thrilled to have him to share a brief word of faith. Good morning, Rich.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, how are you? Let's get started. Can you see my slides there, Skip?
Yep.
Okay, good deal. I've got a cold, so I'll have a raspy voice and I'll be sipping water the whole time to make it through the next 10 minutes. So thanks everyone for tolerating me. So basically, I want to share kind of a journey story, a faith journey story that deals with transition and deals with really career and how God has spoken to me and helped me through my career transitions. I've gone through a few dating back as early as 2008 during the Great Transition, went through a couple transitions there. Then I went through a very plantful one about 1.5 years ago. And this is a slide that shows an aircraft having a tough time landing, a lot of turbulence. Now, it may be because the co-pilot's the dog, but I doubt it. I just had to put that picture in there. I found it, that was kind of cool. But honestly, this is how many of us can feel when we're in transition. Is you know that you're going to land the plane, you know that you're going to get a job, and you know that God knows when you're going to get a job for sure. He doesn't doubt that. But it just is. There's a lot of turbulence to manage, and it really is a challenge at times. About 1.5 years ago, in probably about I guess maybe May, June of 2020, when we were in the thick of COVID, and we were told to go home, work from home, and every company on the planet was figuring that out. There was a lot of stress and a lot of turbulence in the workplace, trying to figure out what's going on. I was working for a Fortune 100 company that was a very strong, high-performance industrial engineering company that, really, even though we had a disruption in the marketplace, really wanted to make their number all the time. The pressure was on. It wasn't like we were getting a lot of relief. And I went through a transition within the company and had to lay off 40% of my team. I ran a global department, and it was really a challenge. It was really a very stressful time. And what I tend to do when I'm in the scripture is I don't know what it is, but God just points me to the verse or set of verses or epistle or whatever it might be that really gets me centered, and it just speaks to my heart. And what I do is I meditate on those verses when I find them and when God puts me in touch with them, and I make it my daily prayer. And so during that time, I was really basically praying every day to be delivered from my opportunity, very intentionally. I wanted to go into something different, didn't know what it was, but it was my intention. But it was a very stressful time. So I want to share with you where God spoke to me in the Bible. And this is the verse the set of verses that he pointed out to me in James 1, first James 2-8. And James is one of my favorite books in the Bible because it's very intentional around teaching us what we need to be doing and acting like as a Christian. And so when we step out in faith, James is there saying, here's the choice you need to make. Skip was just talking about the devil, for example. We have as we're born into a dark world, we have to make those choices every day. Do I choose to step out in faith, even though it's very, very difficult? Or do I choose not to and possibly sin? And so during this time, this really spoke to me, and I'll just read it to you real quickly and point out a couple of high points. Starting with verse 2, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe it and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. So in this situation, I was experiencing a lot of trials and tribulations, like I was saying, to the point where I was praying every day to be delivered to something else. And I knew that I was being tested and I had an opportunity to really step out in faith and through my perseverance, become a better person. And that's something we have to do. We have to choose to do that. It just doesn't happen to us. And so around March of last year, God put me in touch with a nonprofit called CompTIA, who I'm working for now. And it was the last thing I ever would have expected. It's funny that Marsha's going to be talking about working in nonprofits here soon. So I came from this massive big company and into a nonprofit of 260 people. CompTIA is the largest trade association in the world for IT. So big footprint, but a very small firm. And so at that point, I was now in a new situation, quite unexpectedly. And I had to then start to adjust my behavior, if you will, because I was kind of like a bull in a china shop coming off this big company, landed the plane and tried to make all these changes and do all these things in a small firm. And people are pushing back going, no, you got to mellow out, man. You got to chill and you got to think about us first. And that wasn't my impulse. And so God spoke to me through these two verses that I keep in my office as bookends to why it's important to be focused on relationships in our career. And that's what I needed to do at that time. So he really rescued me from myself through these verses. And this is Ephesians 4:29 and Colossians 4:6. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So in other words, taking the focus off myself, making a choice not to look at myself, but to look at faith once again and his word and saying, this is what you need to be doing above all. And then when you talk, you should always be kind and pleasant, so you will be able to answer everyone in the way that you should. So total focus on relationships, total focus on people and their needs, and to pace yourself and make sure that you're adjusting and you're onboarding to this new company, which is very, very different than what I came from, in a respectful, faithful way, if you will. So I literally have these verses on sticky pads stuck to my cross in my office, and I see them every time I have a Zoom call because I need to be reminded of these things to step out in faith because that's what he expects from me, and that's where his blessings come from when I make those choices. So then when I'm successful, our glide path is a little bit different. You really are taking off into the world much better prepared to deal with the things that we all have to deal with, whether it be turbulence or adjusting behavior, working with that change that we're all going to be required to do. When you get into your new company, whatever that might be, you're going to have to think about these things and make sure that you're onboarding properly and making sure that you're keeping others in mind and putting their thoughts and interests first. Because it's too easy to walk in and say, hey, I know it all. That's why you hired me. Get out of my way. And that's not the appropriate thing to do. And Christ says so in his scriptures. So I wish everybody the best of luck. As I was reminding Skip, I do have a class starting Monday night. We have a lot of fun. We do it virtually. I would encourage anybody who wants to join, please give me an email with your intentions. You can write to richard.braden@comcast.net. And hopefully I'll see many of you on Monday night. That's it, Skip.
Awesome. Thank you as usual, Rich. I tell you, I've certainly felt in my career and life, I've had that dog flying my plane a few times, I'll tell you.
It's out of control, man.
No question. But what a great message. So thank you. And thank you all you do for Crossroads, Rich. You've helped so many people and we really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
So now, the moment you've all been waiting for. This lady is, and I said the term legend, and really is in the area of recruiting and job transition and all that. Boy, everybody knows Marsha Ballinger. Most of you have certainly heard of the book, The 20-Minute Networking Meeting, with which she wrote. She's also written 2 other books, one called Winning the Executive Search, and then the most recent book called Make the Jump. And it's where she talks about making the jump into nonprofits. And that's something that is a wonderful thing. And I can't wait to hear her message. It is such a pleasure to have Marcia Ballinger join us this morning, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say. Good morning, Marcia.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here and talk about a topic that we hope resonates. But I want to talk about first three things that I know for sure, and we'll start there. Three things that I know for sure. One is, you'll agree with me, nonprofits are awesome. And I bet if we went person to person to person this morning, we would all talk with great joy about experiences we've had at nonprofits and affection for the work of nonprofits that we're associated with, whether they be social services, whether they be professional member organizations, whether they be academic or healthcare institutions. Nonprofits are awesome, and that I know for sure. The other thing that I know for sure might be a little bit more hidden from most of us, and that is there is a tidal wave of interest right now in movement into the nonprofit sector. And there is a tsunami of people who are thinking to themselves, I wonder if a nonprofit career might be right for me. And for the last maybe 12 years or so, every Wednesday morning, I leave my phone line open. I never schedule meetings, and I make myself available for what I call the recruiter is in. Capital IN, just like Lucy in the comic Peanuts used to have her little box. She was in. The recruiter is in every Wednesday morning, Ballinger Leafblad Executive Search, and I take calls. And the calls can be anything. As Skip mentioned, I love to talk with folks and noodle, and I love to talk about careers, opportunities, being intentional, all of those things. Everything is on the table in confidence on Wednesday mornings. I've been doing that for many, many years. I would say about 5 years ago, the tide had turned. Around 90% of the calls that I get are corporate executives saying, I think I'm interested in transitioning to a nonprofit. And not just on Wednesday mornings. You know, we certainly get calls all week long from individuals who want to be known to us or put into our database or ask about our executive search firm. And the overwhelming majority of those are business people who are thinking about whether they would wish to transition their career into the nonprofit sector. So, you know, the first thing we know to be true is nonprofits are awesome. And secondly, there is a tidal wave of people who, because of that awesomeness, are thinking about, I wonder if there's a place for me in my career at a nonprofit. The third thing I know to be true, and this kind of hinges on why we're here this morning, is that of all of the people that think about nonprofit as a career track, most of them drop out. Most of them are not like Rich and see it through to the end. And over the years of talking to people who had a real spark and a real interest and a real intention, and seeing the outcome of that be not a career into or a job into the nonprofit sector, I started really watching for those individuals that did make the transition. What did they do differently? And certainly my executive search firm specializes in recruiting heads of nonprofits. And every now and then, someone comes from out of sector. And so I've got a big base of study to say, what did those people do differently? What was off-putting or not successful for those that didn't make the transition, and what worked well for those that were able to make the transition? So that's what I wrote about, and that's what I'd love to talk about today, is how can we successfully make the jump into a nonprofit? So the first thing that I would say, and the first thing that I talk about, is asking the question, and I'm sure Rich asked himself this question too, and the question is, am I up for the challenge? Am I up for the challenge of finding a job at a nonprofit? a new sector, to me, finding a job in a new sector is going to take more time. Probably. Do I have the time to learn a new talent marketplace, a new organizational landscape, some new language, all of those kind of things to facilitate my transition into a different sector? Do I have the time? Number two, am I willing to make the effort? I might need to get some additional training or coursework or build a different network. All of those kinds of things take effort. If I'm a bank president, the easiest thing for me, even though job transition is certainly difficult, but the easiest thing to facilitate is going to be another job as a bank president or in banking, let's just say, versus I would like to run a food shelf. Am I ready to take the time? Am I ready to put in the effort? Thirdly, in conversation with my family, I'm pretty likely to need to take a cut in pay to go into the nonprofit sector in many cases, in most cases. Is that something that is feasible for myself and my family at this time? And I really encourage people to get real about that at the beginning, because at the end of the process, if I am the successful candidate, there's not the swing of negotiating that there is in corporate search. And even that is being tamped down as time goes on. So can I take a cut in pay and have that sort of heart-to-heart conversation before I even start? And lastly, how will I feel coming into an organization, using the example of the bank president who now is involved in a food shelf where I know the least of everybody around the table? How will I deal with needing to learn from others in a more significant way than perhaps I have in my career? And maybe I'm used to teaching others and coaching others and leading others. And if I move into a new job in a new sector, I will be the person who will be coached and developed and led. So I asked those questions at the very beginning so that I have clarity around my intention. And for those that say, yes, even thinking through those issues, Marcia, I do still really have intention to learn about and investigate and hopefully execute a transition to make the jump into a nonprofit, I say, let's go. And I'm happy to talk about how we can successfully make the jump. So starting with the question, are you up for the challenge? And the answer being yes. I'd like to talk a little bit about what nonprofits want. And I'm going to start with that question because it is the question that I get asked by almost everybody. People call me, they say, Marcia, I'm a VP of marketing in the printed coatings industry, and I'm thinking about joining a nonprofit because I'm very mission driven and I love youth. And they say, okay, Marcia, what do nonprofits want? I say, what do nonprofits want? The answer to that question is the same as asking somebody, what do for-profits want? If I were to call someone and say, you know, I am interested in working at a for-profit company, what are for-profit companies looking for? Well, we probably have to be more specific than that, right? What do for-profits want? I don't know. Manufacturing is probably looking for things different than financial services, different than professional services, different than retail, on and on and on and on. And what an organization is looking for in a CFO is different than what they are looking for in an administrative person, and different than a sales representative, and different than someone in supply chain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the operative question, what do nonprofits want, is sort of ridiculous when I play it out that way. But it does speak to the fact that if I'm thinking about nonprofit at gate, one of my first questions is, can I be more specific than that? In other words, I'm going to probably want to think about and investigate and try on different parts of nonprofits. What appeals to me? Education, women and families, food insecurity, environmental work, animal welfare, museums, arts and culture. You know, how can I perhaps think about my needs, interests, background? Where am I drawn into a more specific part of the nonprofit sector? And then secondly, what type of job? If I'm the CEO, do I need to be the CEO of a nonprofit? If I'm involved in work around project management, would I want to work on projects in the nonprofit sector, or do I have a different intention at this point in my career? And, you know, just like the 20-minute networking meeting, where I can have a more specific ask and a more specific conversation, I will be more successful than have. It's a little counterintuitive, right? But having a more specific line of questioning gets me much more meaningful input than having a what's going on in the economy sort of discussion. So here too, one of my early activities thinking about nonprofit is, where might I fit? And maybe I think about some of that on my own, and maybe I ask my network. You know me, you've worked with me. We've worked together in our faith community. Where might you see me plugging in? Because I'm kind of thinking about a pivot. So specificity will be helpful as we go along in our journey. But I can tell you some things about what nonprofits want and what they don't want. And I can start by talking a little bit about what nonprofits don't want. Some of this comes from my 1,000 conversations with business people seeking to move to nonprofit and seeing what works and who stylistically makes that transition. It also comes from my 15 years of sitting in the back of the room and watching candidates interview with my clients. My clients typically are boards of directors of nonprofits, and watching different candidates come in and meet with those people. Some of them are corporate coming into nonprofit, and seeing the reaction, seeing the comments when they leave the room. So I can tell you what nonprofits don't want. The first thing that nonprofits don't want is an attitude of superiority. A candidate who comes in to a conversation with someone at a nonprofit and tells them that I would like to work at a nonprofit because I will bring in, I hear this all the time, I'm going to bring in best practices, is not a favored impression. I know how to do this because I've worked at Fortune 500 companies. So I'm going to come into the nonprofit sector and I'm going to show them best practices. I am going to tell them how it's done. That does not resonate. The nonprofit sector, I can tell you, does not see itself as the B squad. The nonprofit sector sees itself as a robust sector with as much or more complexity and value and important work and stakeholder relations, et cetera, as any other sector. So what nonprofits do not resonate with is an attitude of superiority from a corporate background. Nonprofits also, and this is one where we would have to be a bit sensitive, do not typically resonate with candidates for whom looking at the nonprofit sector is only a hedge against corporate. So coming in and saying, well, I've looked for a year and a half in corporate and I just can't find anything, so now I've decided to open it up to the nonprofit sector, again, is a message, even if true, that typically doesn't resonate. When people call me and say, you know, I've decided to look into the nonprofit sector, I'll always ask, exclusively, or are you also continuing your job search in corporate? Well, I'm continuing my job search in corporate, but you know, it's tough out there, so I'm going to open it up into nonprofit also. I'm not saying no, I'm saying be really cautious about that messaging. If you were interviewing a candidate and they say, you know, I'm really interested in something else, but you know, your organization is okay as a backup, you know, that's a message that probably we won't connect with as well, right? So be cautious about that message. And if I have made the decision to move into a nonprofit, be prepared to talk about that why and your process of discernment. That can be a really compelling story. What nonprofits also do not want is a vibe that you are interested in the job because you're ready to slow down. And I do hear that a lot. Marcia, I have worked low these last 40 years. I've worked really hard and I'm looking for a job at a nonprofit because I would love to slow down. Now, that's fine if you're looking for a part-time job at a nonprofit or a volunteer job a couple of times a week. But if you're seeking a full-time job with benefits, you likely won't slow down. As a matter of fact, the individual that provided the quote for the front of my book, Richard Davis, the former CEO of US Bank, he went from being the chair and CEO of US Bank to being the CEO at Make-A-Wish Foundation. And he said, Marcia, I've never worked so hard in my life. I would tell every single corporate executive, every business person who's thinking about a nonprofit to expect to work harder in your next chapter, and it will definitely not be a slowdown. Number one, it's a full-time job, and add on to that all of the additional learning that comes from going into a new sector. So sending the message that work at a nonprofit is easier is also a message that does not resonate. You know, and a similar message of being interested in a nonprofit because I've been working so hard all of these years. None of those phrases will be well received. And so the next one is super common, but let's talk about it because there's in many cases a need to maybe massage our language a little bit. And it's this: I want to go to work at a nonprofit because I want to give back, because I'm mission driven. I want to work at a nonprofit because I want to feel good about my work. I want to see my work leading to helping people. I want to feel good every day when I go home. I want to live out my values. What was the one thing that you heard in every one of those sentences? The word I. That overused is not compelling. It almost sounds like the nonprofit sector exists for me to plop in when I'm ready so that I can self-actualize. Now, that might not be what we mean. It certainly isn't what we mean. But I have seen many, many candidates come in, and when asked why they're interested in a particular position, they use a lot of this I language. I'm mission driven. I want to give back. I've got values. I want to live it out. And I also have to tell you, every single other candidate is also mission driven. If we are interviewing for a job as the VP of development at a social services organization, I can assure you every other candidate is also mission driven. And every other candidate has values that they want to see lived out through literacy or whatever the mission of that organization is. So number one, to say I'm mission driven and that's why I want this job is not a differentiator from other candidates. And without thought, we can be caught up in a lot of I language. So I point that out only because I know there's more there. I know there's always more there. and taking the time to think through and work through that narrative is exceptionally helpful. Nonprofits don't want someone whose only objective is to get their own self-actualization. The last thing that I would say that nonprofits don't want is a candidate who is going to tell them what's transferable and what's not. And as a business candidate, it's a high likelihood that we are taking our background in sales or marketing or administration or operations or whatever I've worked in, and I'm thinking that that might be transferable to this job at a nonprofit. And that may very well be true. But I also find that candidates who are highly interested in the job try to tell the nonprofit about what's transferable, rather than helping the nonprofit see what's transferable. And here's a really good example. Probably this happens most when I get calls from people who are in sales and they've made the discernment that they think they would like to move into fundraising. And I've probably had 50 calls like this, maybe just in the last couple of years. Marcia, I would like to get out of sales. I've been on the road. It's really difficult. The hours are long. You know, I want to move into a nonprofit. And because I've been in sales, I think fundraising would be the place for me, because after all, fundraising is just sales. And really, it's all transferable. You know, my client work, working in the printed coatings industry, working with my regional client organizations, I think that's absolutely 100% transferable to raising major gifts for this, you know, small academic institution, or for the Humane Society, or the Friends of the Mississippi, or whatever it might be. That often doesn't resonate. I think that a healthy humility that says I would have a lot to learn, but I have some things that I think might bring to bear, is probably a more helpful posture. What I say to that vice president of sales when I get that call about it's all transferable is, because the mirror can be very helpful. I say, okay, appreciate that. How many fundraisers have you hired over the years into your sales function? Would you hire a fundraiser from the United Way to be a sales manager in your department selling chemicals in the western part of the US? Well, no, I've never considered hiring a fundraiser. Well, if it doesn't go one way, it doesn't go the other way. So if I think that everything I've done is transferable going this way, maybe I would ask, would you ever hire somebody going the other way, and do a little bit of self-reflection? And it's a healthy self-reflection, and the answer is probably no, but it does force us to say, all right, what could I have maybe been a little more flexible on so that it could have gone the other way? What really is at the core of what I bring to the job marketplace? But I'm going to let the organization decide what's transferable and what is not. And nonprofits, nonprofits are my clients. I've been working with nonprofits fairly exclusively for about 10 years. And they are not sitting around desperately waiting for Marcia Ballinger to have a candidacy. If I am right for an organization and for a position, we may very well come to an agreement and have a wonderful partnership for years to come. But I never assume that nonprofits are sitting around waiting for Marcia Ballinger to apply for a position. There's a second step that I would like to talk about of what nonprofits do want, where I might be able to bring some of my background my valuable experiences, my lived experiences and my skills and attributes to the table. Every job is different, right? Every corporate job is different. I've already made that point. A CFO is different than a VP of supply chain, which is different than an office manager, which is different than a sales director. Not to mention what part of what sector I might be representing. But what I can say, writ large, in the nonprofit community, there are some themes. There are some themes. Most nonprofits are going to seek individuals, if in leadership positions, that might have a background in fundraising or revenue generation. So look very closely at a nonprofit job description or a battery of them. Let's just say I'm in the early stages and I'm trying to decide where in the nonprofit sector I might fit. If I am seeing fundraising as an important attribute or a requirement, the need for fundraising skills is very real. The budget at one of my clients, Big Brothers Big Sisters, is about $5 or $6 million, and it is entirely fundraised. It's not government contracts. There's not other revenue streams. It is fundraised. And hypothetically, if I were to apply for that job and they'd say, Marcia, talk about your experience with fundraising, I'd say, well, I've been on a number of nonprofit boards and, been on a committee here and attended some fundraisers over there. And I'm sure I'm a fast learner. No one would sleep at night if I were the person who was responsible for overseeing the raising of $5 million per or more, or else the organization, shrinks, atrophies, closes, stops programs, whatever the case may be. So no one's trying to be a jerk when fundraising is a responsibility. It is usually a very real responsibility, without which those philanthropic dollars, there are grave consequences to an organization. So if my only experience in fundraising is, PTA or fundraisers for my kids' soccer or hockey, that's really not relevant at the level that most nonprofits need to see. And the setting is totally different. So think about what you do really bring to fundraising. And if you don't bring a lot, but if you have a style that loves to work with people, and if you have a background perhaps in client relation management, and if you love giving presentations, and if you have written grants, or all of those kind of things, you might have a base of things to talk about. And we're not going to oversell that, because I've done bake sales for my daughter's PTA, boy, I could be, a VP of fundraising. No, I would say, I'm not going to apply to be a VP of fundraising, but if there's a job that has a modicum of fundraising, I'm going to be humble about that. And I'm going to say I've got some familiarity from boards that I've served. I've done some modest fundraising through organizations that I've been connected with. And my thinking around getting up to speed on being able to be a partner in the fundraising area would be, I would join AFP right away and I would get active in the association. I know that Indiana University has online courses on fundraising for new nonprofit leaders. I would take that immediately at my own expense. I would get a coach and a mentor, and I would look, to the organization for ways that I could continue to develop. So I would have more humility around that than overselling. But many nonprofit jobs, not all, are going to have some amount of fundraising, a lot or a little. So that's something to watch for. Certainly nonprofits are looking for folks, the same as all of us, right? That have content expertise. And if I am the company Quality Ingredients, and we make milk product ingredients, I'm probably hiring people that have a background in food science, foods distribution, consumer packaged goods, and somebody who, you know, seeks to plop over to quality ingredients from Thrivent, let's just say, might not have the content expertise, right? And so a nonprofit's going to have that same orientation. If it is a nonprofit that serves individuals with disabilities, Minnesota is an extraordinarily complex state with very, very in-depth contracts that relate to disability services. Coming into that cold and sort of knowing that landscape of funders and providers, all of those types of things might be insurmountable, unless perhaps I've been a many-year volunteer in those areas, or I avocationally have served on a board or served on a committee. Maybe I have content expertise that might relate to the Alzheimer's Association because of parents and other family members for whom I've worked and for whom I've advocated. So you may have content expertise that relates to part of the nonprofit sector. And I always encourage people to think early on in their journey about what is your inner circle. If you have been active in choral music, that's content expertise. If you've been very, very active in environmental causes over the years in different organizations in different ways, that's content expertise. If you're a 20-year veteran of the Red Cross with a lot of training on disaster relief and recovery, that's content expertise that you've gained. So I always ask people to think about, where is your content expertise coming into the nonprofit sector? If I work at General Mills, you know, maybe I actually have placed a former General Mills executive to run a co-op, a grocery cooperative that was a nonprofit. I've placed food people coming out of consumer packaged goods to run a food shelf. So because they had the content expertise. So what do I bring from my world of work that is content expertise? An attorney? Well, I've placed attorneys to run the Bar Association or the Immigrant Law Center. So there's that. But then what do I have avocationally? Where have I spent my volunteer time? What have I been involved in? The closer in I am, the better off I'll be. The further out I am, the more challenging sharing content expertise is. And nonprofits, hey, even with the world's best training, do seek people who come in with some content expertise. And nonprofits run lean, so there may not be significant training opportunities in every job. So we sort of need to expect we need to come in with that. Nonprofits frequently want a connection to communities served. And, you know, I mentioned choral music. If I can't carry a tune and I've never attended a concert, I might not have a connection with the communities that the Minnesota Chorale serves. If I have limited connections with communities of color, particularly North Minneapolis, I might not be the best candidate at Northside Achievement Zone. I think across the board in social services, nonprofits do seek extremely significant cultural competence, working with a broad variety of communities and stakeholders. So if I have not done work that I can speak to around diversity, equity, and inclusion, I might start now. You know, what courses can I take? What can I read? Where can I be involved in order to be able to talk about my own journey to become more culturally competent? Depending upon what job I am applying for, if I'm reporting to a board of directors, board experience is helpful. If I am part of a committee, board committee experience is helpful. Many people call me with an intention to move into nonprofit, and I say, well, that's great. You know, let's look at your nonprofit experience that you've already had. And often it is non-existent. And people say, well, I've been so busy low these many years, working 60 hours a week in my corporate job, I just haven't volunteered. Start now. Partially because of what I will learn about the reality of the nonprofit sector. Partially it helps with me with my why. Yes, I am serious about this. Learning about board governance, committee governance in the nonprofit sector as a volunteer is helpful to send the message that I will understand how to do that in my job. So some nonprofit experiences, volunteerism, helping, assisting, fundraising is all part of what you might bring to a nonprofit sector. Nonprofits, like every other organization, are looking for people that they consider to be fully qualified. And fully qualified might come from my job, fully qualified might come from my volunteerism, might come from what I have learned, my educational background, all of those types of things. Nonprofits are also seeking some things that probably are a bit more obviously transferable. An organization of 50 staff people, requires leadership of 50 people. And you might have a staff that works for you now that's 50 people. That's going to be somewhat more obviously transferable, and your leadership background will be very attractive. If you've been involved in strategic planning in one sector, or even avocationally coming into a new organization, that could be very attractive. So could programs, program evaluation, operational evaluation, operations management, all of those types of things could be valued at nonprofits. I tell people, start to think about it. There are postings of nonprofit jobs on Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, MCN, Minnesota Council on Foundations, MCF, Pollen Midwest. So if every week I take a half hour and I peek at the postings and I start to read, do any of those seem to resonate? Do any of those seem to be a fit? Where are they? And I can then take that information and start to test that with my loved ones and start to test that with my network to perhaps hone in on a specific part of the nonprofit sector that I might wish to more proactively explore. Once I've done that work, that early work, that discernment work, that thinking work, that preparedness work, I'm ready to jump in perhaps to the actual job search part of it. And you're already partly there because you've got a resume and a cover letter, and you are thinking about job searches and those processes. People ask me, Marcia, should my resume be different if I'm applying for a job at a nonprofit? I'm not a super huge fan of having 10 different resumes, and trying to keep them straight, and I'm using this one for that and this one over here for that. But it is possible that I might want to tweak my resume to enhance my nonprofit experiences, and so that those pop. And also to make sure that some of the things pop that I mentioned, strategic planning or leadership or operations or evaluation, those types of things that might be components of your nonprofit ideal position. And you're also going to want to make sure that all of your nonprofit volunteerism, board service, committee service, et cetera, is represented on your resume. If you did that type of thing as part of your job, such as I was the United Way representative from 2015 to 2016. I led a women in business discussion group for up and coming women and coached those coming into my industry. Those types of things too have value. So make sure your resume is inclusive of all of those types of things. I'm sort of hoping that all of your volunteerism is already on your resume, because I think that has value whether or not you're looking at the nonprofit sector, but certainly if you're considering a position in the nonprofit sector, we're going to want to include all of those things and perhaps add a bit more so that your community orientation pops. When you send a cover letter for a nonprofit job position, you may need to spend a little bit more time and have a bit more intention around your narrative why, right? If you are a director of quality in the wood products industry and you're applying for a job as a senior director of quality in the wood products industry, the why is probably pretty obvious. If I am applying to be a director of programs at the Boys and Girls Club, I might need to share more about my narrative. Maybe I was a Boys and Girls Club kid and that was impactful to me. Maybe I have been a longtime volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club. Maybe my family is connected to that mission in a really deep way. So I want to make sure that my narrative is explained, and the cover letter is probably a place where I can do that. So I won't want to skimp on that. I may want to take that job description for that position and in my cover letter highlight, I've overseen staffs from 20 to 40 leaders in multiple sites. I oversee programs and measure results, reporting out to a group president on a quarterly basis. I've been on my organization's foundation committee, as well as I've been the representative to the United Way. So you may want to highlight some of those types of things as well. In a soft way, think back to those earlier comments about humility. As you search for a nonprofit position, some of the same rules of overall job search applies. You might possibly work with recruiters, such as my firm or many others. But that said, recruiters are paid to represent fully qualified candidates. And if the job that you're interested in, even in your own estimation, is a real long shot, then realize you're going to be a real long shot through if there's an executive search firm representing that opportunity. So the best way to get my interest known to the executive search community is early on, and maybe you've already done that. I hope you've already done that, because working with recruiters is a day one activity when I'm in a job transition. I send my resume to every single search firm in town. There's probably 50 search firms in town, with an email that says I'm in a transition, I'm seeking a role as a vice president of operations, and I've worked in these industries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm seeking to stay in the Twin Cities area, and et cetera, et cetera. Cut and paste that thing 50 times. Bing, 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 bing. If you've ever heard me talk about job transition in any sector, for-profit or nonprofit, I really believe that contacting the search community is an early activity, because contacting with the search community is a you never know activity. Of those 50 firms that I ping, 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 email, 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 it takes a half hour and you're done, One never knows which of those firms might have an interesting opportunity for me. 49 of them will not call me right back. One of them is going to run across hot coals to get to the phone to call me, because they might have an interesting opportunity to talk to me about. Someone else might call me next week. They're not sure if I'd be interested, but they're going to run this past me anyway. Someone else might call me 3 weeks later to see who I know, because this position is not exactly for me, but it's in the same industry and they want to make an acquaintance. Someone else might call me 2 months later, double checking to see if I'm still available, because something might be coming up. That's how search works. It's going to be an annuity. And similarly with nonprofits, if I've made the intention to look at nonprofit positions. I've probably discerned what part of the nonprofit sector, as a classically trained pianist who's taught music for 20 years avocationally, and who also has sat with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. I'm now taking my administrative leadership background, and I'm seeking to translate that into a job in the arts and culture sector. You could ping, the group of executive search firms in the Twin Cities that work in nonprofits with that message. And it's important that you do that proactively, because if you are currently not in the nonprofit sector, you're currently a dean of students at an academic institution, I'm not going to find you if I have a position in the music sector. I might not find you, obviously, as I do my research to find candidates to recruit. So proactively, send your materials to executive search firms that practice in the nonprofit sector. And again, once you do that, you don't need to call, or you don't need to call weekly, and you don't need to write every week. When your background is right for a search, trust me, we will absolutely call and contact. So search firms are one way. They're a small percent likelihood, but they're also only a half hour to connect with everyone. You can and should network as your primary activity to finding your job at nonprofit. Rich talked a bit about perseverance, and that word resonated with me because perseverance is part of this. You know that. I sometimes talk to people and they say, well, I've had one, and one networking meeting is awesome, because in every networking meeting, I learn something and I make a contact, and I have potentially gained an ambassador for my candidacy, and I've maybe made a new potential network. So all of that has great value, but times 20 or times 30. Sometimes when I talk with folks on my Wednesday morning calls or other times, and they describe their background to me and they say, I'd like to transition to a different type of position, probably in the nonprofit sector, I can almost always gauge, and I'll say, Skip, I think you are 20 networking meetings, you're 20 cups of coffee away from your next perfect opportunity. Or Marcia, I sense that you're probably 40 cups of coffee away from your next opportunity. But it is all about perseverance. The early phase of those networking coffees, and the coffees might be virtual and the coffees might be in person, but those early cups of coffee are sometimes more strategic or high level. And the operative question in a lot of cases for us who might be thinking about nonprofit sector is, Phil, you worked in the nonprofit sector for 30 years. You know me. I'm thinking about making the jump. Where might you see me plugging in? Lisa, you've been involved at Tubman, and you've been involved with the Domestic Violence Center on their boards of directors. I'm thinking about making a transition. Here's a little snippet of my background. Where could you see me fitting into the nonprofit sector from what you know of the landscape? So-and-so, you and I have met over the years. We've been involved in youth sports activities and coaching, all of those kind of things for so many years. I love my work. I love the work that I do in sales engineering, but I'm feeling called to maybe transition to working with youth and take my coaching background and my years of youth education and make that my full-time occupation. And I'd love to get your thoughts about where you think I might do that. So you can see the questions are sort of up here. They're kind of noodling questions, and they are inviting the other person into my conversation. And what I say to people a lot is nobody has a job. Virtually nobody has a job. When I set up a networking meeting, they're not sitting there waiting with a job secretly in their hip pocket, waiting for me to come in because they have this perfect unfilled job. You know, that never happens. 25 years of executive search, like that doesn't happen. When people loose call me, I don't even have a job and I'm in search, right? Nobody ever has a job, but I'll tell you this, everybody has wisdom and loves to share it. Everybody has wisdom and is honored to share it. Everybody has wisdom and is honored to share it. So when I call someone and say, I really respect, I honor the years that you've spent volunteering in our community with regard to education for new immigrants and settlement work and literacy work. That's so, so valuable. Thank you. I'm wondering if I could get your wisdom about connecting into that type of work. Everybody has wisdom and they love to share it. So that is the early part of our networking. And as we have those conversations and people say, well, I could surely see you doing something that's a connection between families and healthcare. I mean, have you ever thought about Ronald McDonald House? And you try it on. I mean, you sort of try it on in your heart. And you think about it. And so the conversations go from where might I fit in this universe of thousands of potential nonprofit connections to something a bit more honed in. And then I have an even more particular intention. And my networking is I've discerned that I'd like to work in the intersection between healthcare and serving families. Or I've discerned that I'd like to work in the intersection between advocacy and access to higher education. You know, and so I maybe have a descriptor, and my networking is around that particular component. So networking. We know this. You are statistically speaking somewhere between 85 to 90% likely to find your next job through networking. If you are switching sectors into a different sector, such as for-profit to nonprofit, you know, even more, right? So job postings, knowing I might be one of a couple hundred people that responds to a real attractive posting in the nonprofit sector, and I'm not there to explain myself about how it's transferable. Working with search firms who are contractually obliged to present fully qualified candidates only. But networking, why is networking so successful? It's because if I'm talking to someone, I'm talking to Harry, let's just say, and Harry is on the board of Slipstream, an organization that works in climate change work, let's just say. And I talk with him about all of my work at Xcel Energy and how I've worked on those types of issues, but I'd like to kind of switch to a nonprofit. And Harry says, you know what, I'm aware of something in an organization I'm associated with. It's not posted yet, but let me take your resume to our president. Let me walk your resume to our board chair. All of a sudden, I'm a pool of one and someone's vouching for me. That's why networking works. I'm a pool of one and someone's vouching for me. So all of those things are true about the importance of networking, the importance of conducting myself in a way with humility and grace and welcome throughout the interview process. And I think the last thing that I would say, and I go into a lot of detail in the book about this, is if I am really seeking to make a switch to a nonprofit, and I've searched my heart and I've talked to my family, going into nonprofit and seeking a full-time job with full benefits is only one way to make the jump. And in the book, I talk about 10 ways that you could make the jump. A full-time job with benefits, you know, competing for a full-time job with benefits is only one way to make the jump. There are many needs in the nonprofit sector. The nonprofit sector needs skilled individuals to consult. Do you have a background, for example, that you could bring to the nonprofit sector on a consulting basis? And if so, how might you set that up? How might you set yourself up to do that? And are you right for that type of work? You might seek to bring your background into nonprofits as an interim professional or an interim leader. There is a tidal wave of transition in the nonprofit world right now. Search firms, have 10 times the work they can possibly handle because there's a lot of transition. There's a lot of transition everywhere, but at nonprofits, there are some demographic reasons that we started reading about 10, 15 years ago in my industry that today are here. And when there is a transition, such as a retirement or an unexpected opening, organizations are often caught in a pinch and they need an interim to help them out and bring in expertise. And maybe the interim isn't someone that would get that job permanently, but the person has great value. Might I take my background and help organizations on a shorter term basis? Have I learned some things that I might teach to others? And in what setting could I do that? The why, the Boys and Girls Clubs, academic institutions, youth organizations, Prepare and Prosper, Lutheran Social Service. Many organizations have ways that community members can teach others. And that might be a way to satisfy my interest in being in a nonprofit. It might also be a way that I can get into a nonprofit and have that at the top of my resume that says, yes, I'm here, I'm serious, I'm gaining experience, I'm making connections. So like I say, I do outline 10 different ways to make the jump because all of us are different. And if we have thought through that, I do feel called to make this change, you aren't limited to the job postings. You aren't limited to a full-time job with benefits. You might plug in and bring immense value to the nonprofit sector in any number of ways. And as a last comment, I would say, you're here today, and for that I'm grateful. We're here today virtually, but we are in conversation and we are in community around how might we think about giving and how might we think about contributing and how might we think about our career in a new way. And even though we're here today virtual, the community surrounds you. And I know that almost every single person that you meet brings some bit of wisdom and is interested in being part of your journey. So please don't hesitate to reach out to those in your networks and test your thoughts and ask about your ideas and see what you can gain. Along those lines, I would love to be part of your journey. And I would love to be a guide as you think about these things. Please contact me any Wednesday during my open phone hours. The recruiter is in for you. And I am very specifically interested because this book just came out. There's this early phase of being very interested in getting your thoughts, your ideas, how this applies to you. So do give me a call on my Wednesday mornings, and I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to get your feedback, would love to continue to be part of your journey. I will turn it over back to Harry and Skip. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia. What a wonderful message, and so important, and to benefit from your years of experience and insights is just so incredibly valuable. For your Wednesday, your kind and generous offer to chat with people, what time is that? And is there a number that would be best to call?
Yes, I will put my number in the chat. I am available every Wednesday morning from 8 to 10 a.m.
8 to 10. Wow.
Most people don't call me right at 8, and so I'm usually reachable right at 8 o'clock. And if I'm on the phone with another caller, I'll call you right back. But I do like to take at least 20 or 30 minutes with each caller to talk things through.
Wow. Well, what an incredible opportunity, folks. If you're thinking anything about the nonprofit space, you have the opportunity to talk to one of the nation's top experts in that area. What a generous offer. So thank you for that. And thank you for your time today and your great message. We really, really appreciate it, Marcia.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye. Okay, folks, a couple things before we're done. Again, resources for you in job transition. First, for those of you that are on the line, would love to hear, we get people from all over the world on this podcast, this webinar, whatever you want to call it. So if you're outside of Minnesota listening to us, just put in chat where you're viewing, hearing, watching us from. And we'd love to see it. So just pop into chat wherever you're watching this from, and I will share my screen with you and go through some of these resources that Crossroads has for you for your job search. Because as I said, when I was in my job search, it can be a bit intimidating, and we don't really know. I'd never been through a job search before. I had started my own company out of college and ran it for close to 30 years as an entrepreneur, and never looked for a job. And so I had no idea what to do. And Crossroads was incredibly valuable to me, all the resources. So let me go through them quickly and then talk about the book that you get a free copy of. So first off, our main campus, our main source origin that we are kind of based in is Grace Church in Eden Prairie. But we're also connected to a couple other churches, Minnesota, Woodbury Lutheran in Woodbury, and North Heights Lutheran in Arden Hills. And when we're in person, hopefully soon, we meet at all those locations. Right now, we're still 100% virtual. So all the meetings are virtual, but check out mncrossroads.com for really your go-to resource. This should be on your speed dial if there was such a thing on your computer. mncrossroads.com, because there are all the information about what's going on in Crossroads, which there's a lot. There's events, there's resources for you, and there's jobs. There's jobs posted every week on that site. And so make sure you're checking it out to see what's out there and to see what other resources are available to you, to educate yourself, to meet with other people in your job transition. So what about kind of the ongoing stuff that we have for you at Minnesota Crossroads? First off, networking with Grace. This is one of the best networking groups in the Twin Cities for people in job transition. It meets Thursdays from 9 to 11, so literally just in a few minutes here. If you want to attend, we'd love to have you. You have to sign up. So you go onto the same site, MN Crossroads, that you signed up for this program, and you can sign up. And it's a great a great networking event run by Wes Roper and Wes Tang. It's been around for over 10 years, and great opportunity to chat with other people, get connections into targeted companies you may have, get connections to people that might be helpful for you. So don't miss that. It's a great networking group. We also have one-on-one coaching available, and there's a lot of us, myself included, a lot of others, they give their time that if you want to talk about resumes or talk about job interviewing or talk about networking or talk about whatever it is, you can reach out and get one-on-one time with different business coaches that come from all different aspects of types of work and different ages and whatever. We're all unique. And So reach out. There's people that are waiting that would love to sit down with you and address any specific questions or things that you have. We're also big believers in prayer. There are people praying for you, even if you don't know it or don't even ask for it. They are praying for those in job transition. They are praying for people in the program, and for clarity, and for strength, and just feeling supported, and whatever you might be needing in your job search. And if you have a specific prayer request, please reach out and let us know, and we will certainly pray for it. The group that we referenced earlier with Rich Braden, that he is starting a new one on Monday, is a small group, an 8-week class that literally takes you through every single element of job transition that you would need to know about. This blew me away. Again, I had no idea what was involved in job transition and no idea what to do. And whether you're just a novice like me, having no clue, or you've been through job transition before and just maybe a refresher to kind of get you on track and working efficiently to help yourself land as quickly as possible, you need to be in the class. It's incredibly helpful. And as you can see, it goes over literally everything you could possibly imagine, from attitude to networking to negotiating for salary to resumes, interviewing, targeting companies, whatever it might be. It's all there. And Rich, the class that's starting on Monday, has led these classes for years. He's got incredible experience, not only in his own work life, but also in coaching folks in job transitions. So to have an opportunity to get in Rich's class in this regard is a great one. So if you are not in this class or have not been through it, get on Crossroads and sign up for Rich's class starting on Monday. You will not regret it. It will be time incredibly well spent. Also, make sure you join the LinkedIn Career Network group, because again, it's a great resource as far as a way to stay in community with other people in job transition, throw things out there, get input on different things. And again, resources are available, but there's a lot of alumni. We've got, I don't know, 1,000 more, I don't know, lots of alumni that are connected to this. And so if you have questions or want to reach out about a specific company or whatever, reach out on that group, and chances are decent that you're going to get a response from either that company or the industry that you're looking for more information in. This is another super cool thing, is the wonderful presentation that Marcia had today. And I know I was trying to take notes and stuff, and I wasn't able to keep up because she had so much incredible information. Well, that presentation is going to be available on YouTube, as are most of the presentations that we offer, typically 3 a month. They've been going on for years. So there's some great content. This is a treasure chest of information for job transition, for business, for just life. It's just fantastic information. So go on to the YouTube channel and just poke around. You will find things that will pique your interest, and you get to watch them whenever you want, as many times as you want. So what a fun Friday night, grab some popcorn and find a nice workshop on job transition, and that is a party. Well, maybe not, but it's time well spent, and you will love it. It's great stuff. So make sure you take advantage of that and check out YouTube. There's a lot of other resources, and I'm privileged to work for a company called 𝙈𝙖𝙠𝙚 Financial. It's a faith-based organization. We support a lot of nonprofits, to Marcia's wonderful book and background, but also different groups and things. And Minnesota Crossroads is one. And it's a privilege to be able to support 𝙈𝙖𝙧𝙘𝙀 and what he does and has built with Minnesota Crossroads, and the thousands of people that they have all helped. So it is our privilege to be able to do that. And part of that is I was asked to put together a series on different workshops on a variety of issues. And I do that. They occur on Tuesdays. You sign up the same way you did for this or would for any of the Minnesota Crossroads things. And a lot of different topics, everything from financial issues during job transition to market update. Not that there's anything going on in the market these days, right? Holy smokes. But what's going on? If you have questions about it, oh my goodness, my 401k is so far down and my retirement, what's going on? We go through and talk about the market and what we see in retirement. We have a workshop just talking about retirement. Are you on track? Do you have a plan about things that you can do to ensure that you're able to, when you get to that point, have the resources you need to have the retirement that you want? So any of those you can sign up on that site also. I referenced the many volunteers, and Harry's put together an incredible team of people that have many, if not most, have been through job transition from all different backgrounds and types of career and all that. And we are all here to serve you. We are here for you, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's coaching, whether it's prayer, whatever. Again, the message keeps coming back to something you need to remember is you are not in your job transition alone. I referenced the three churches that we work through. Here are websites for each of them. They both have in-person and streaming services on Sundays. If you don't have a church home, so feel free to reach out. They would all love to see you. So those are the resources. I mentioned the book that I referenced earlier when I gave my testimony or my message called How Long, O Lord, How Long? Dale Kreinkamp wrote this book, and you get a free copy of the book by signing. Make sure that you've signed up. If you have signed up online, we will send it to you. And it's a great book, and it will be a blessing to you in your job transition. So thank you so much for joining us here, Minnesota Crossroads. Hope you found it beneficial and took away a nugget or two or 10, like I think I did. But hope it was a blessing to you in your job search. Reach out. You're not alone. There are resources to help you. We're here to help you. So make sure you do so. And our next event is going to be next Thursday evening. It will be Natalie Ackerman, and Natalie's phenomenal resource in job transition. And she's going to be talking about strengths, easy to say, strengths finders, which is a great tool. And if you've done it or have a long time ago or wondering about exactly how to use it or what it means, Natalie is the person to talk to. She will be able to unwrap that package, and it's a great tool to help you in your job search. So don't miss that next Thursday evening. Again, sign up on MN Crossroads. So have a blessed day. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again.